June 18, 1944. 2,245 hours. The Philippine Sea, roughly 200 miles west of Saipan. Vice Admiral Marc Mitscher stands on the flag bridge of USS Lexington, gazing into the darkness. The tropical night is moonless, pitch black, broken only by the faint green shimmer of phosphorescence in the ship's wake as it cuts through calm water. Around him, his staff stands close, their faces washed in the dim red glow of plotting tables. Maps cover the surfaces, showing two enormous fleets slowly closing on one another, arrows and symbols inching toward collision. The air is heavy with the smell of strong coffee, cigarette smoke, and tension. Captain Arleigh Burke, Mitscher's chief of staff, has just finished outlining the plan. Intelligence reports are firm. The Japanese mobile fleet is steaming east. 9 carriers, more than 400 aircraft. By dawn, they will be well within striking distance. Burke's recommendation is direct and unquestioned, supported by every carrier warfare manual ever written. Strike first. Launch everything at first light. Hit the enemy before they can hit us. It is classic carrier doctrine. It is what aggressive commanders do. It is how carrier battles are won. Mitscher says nothing. He stands quietly for a long moment. 57 years old. Small, lean, weathered. His trademark long-billed baseball cap sits low on his head. Even in the red glow of the bridge lights, his face gives nothing away. Around him, staff officers wait, watching. The silence stretches, uncomfortable and heavy. Finally, Mitscher reaches for the phone and calls Admiral Raymond Spruance, commander of the 5th Fleet, aboard USS Indianapolis. The conversation lasts just 3 minutes. Mitscher speaks softly, his voice barely audible even to the officers standing nearby. When he hangs up, his expression remains unchanged. But Burke already knows the answer. You can see it in the way Mitscher's shoulders settle. They will not strike first. They will hold position west of Saipan. They will protect the invasion fleet. And they will wait for the Japanese to come to them. Every officer on that bridge feels it instantly. A sinking certainty. In their minds, they have just been sentenced to hell. In 12 hours, perhaps less, hundreds of Japanese aircraft will swarm toward Task Force 58. American carriers, the most valuable assets in the Pacific Fleet, will sit exposed. Vulnerable. Burning. Men will die. And all of it could have been avoided by attacking first. By seizing the initiative. By doing what every instinct, every doctrine, and every training exercise screams is the right move. Burke will later write that they knew they were going to have hell slugged out of them in the morning. They knew they could not reach the Japanese fleet. They knew the Japanese could reach them. It felt, he said, like waiting for an execution. What none of them understands yet is that Mitscher has just set the most perfectly constructed trap in naval history. By the next day, the decision to wait, to let the enemy strike first, will obliterate Japanese carrier aviation in a single afternoon. Americans will call it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The Japanese will call it the end. This is the story of how patience proved deadlier than aggression, how defensive genius overcame offensive doctrine, and how one admiral's unconventional choice annihilated an entire enemy air force in less than 10 hours of daylight. Vice Admiral Marc Mitscher was never expected to become a great admiral. Born January 26, 1887, he barely survived the Naval Academy, graduating 107th out of 130 in the class of 1910. His mathematics scores were poor, his tactical grades unremarkable, but he could fly. In June 1916, Mitscher earned his designation as Naval Aviator No. 33, placing him among the first 50 pilots in U.S. Navy history. While other officers built careers commanding battleships, Mitscher lived in the air. By 1944, the small, weathered man, still wearing his distinctive long-billed cap to shield his light-sensitive skin, commanded the most powerful naval force ever assembled. Task Force 58. 15 fast carriers, 7 fleet carriers, and 8 light carriers. 7 fast battleships. More than 20 cruisers. Roughly 60 destroyers. Over 900 aircraft. 4 carrier task groups spread across vast stretches of ocean. And ahead of them, 15 miles forward, Vice Admiral Willis Lee's battle line. Battleships forming a floating wall of anti-aircraft fire. Mitscher's command style was unusual. He spoke softly. He used few words. And he trusted his subordinates completely. Captain Burke later wrote that Mitscher's concern for his pilots was so deep that it drew from them a final ounce of effort and loyalty, without which he could never have become the world's foremost carrier commander. But on the night of June 18th, that force faced a terrifying dilemma. American intelligence had located the Japanese mobile fleet. Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa commanded 9 carriers, including the brand-new 31,000-ton Taiho, with its armored flight deck and roughly 430 aircraft. Combined Fleet Headquarters promised another 500 land-based planes from Guam, Rota, and nearby islands. Battleships Yamato and Musashi, the largest warships ever built, provided overwhelming firepower. Together, this force represented Japan's final hope for a decisive battle, the Kantai-Kessen that would decide the war. Ozawa held one crucial advantage: range. Japanese carrier aircraft could strike targets 300 to 345 miles away. American aircraft were limited to roughly 200 to 250 miles for effective combat operations. Ozawa intended to exploit this advantage mercilessly. He would launch strikes from beyond American counterattack range, hit Task Force 58, then land his aircraft on Guam to refuel before attacking again on the return flight. Shuttle bombing. On paper, it was brilliant. In reality, it was suicide. What Ozawa did not realize was that every advantage he relied upon was actually a hidden weakness waiting to be exploited. The range he believed was his strength was about to become his death sentence. Japanese pilots would fly hundreds of miles through defended airspace, burning precious fuel with every mile. They would arrive exhausted, at the very edge of their endurance, with little fuel left for combat maneuvering or for the long journey home. American pilots, by contrast, would be fresh, fully fueled, and only minutes from a friendly deck if damaged. And the Americans possessed technological advantages Ozawa could scarcely imagine. U.S. carriers were equipped with SK air search radar, capable of detecting incoming aircraft at distances of 75 to 100 nautical miles. SM fighter direction radar could determine altitude, speed, and course. Radar picket destroyers extended detection out to nearly 150 miles from the main fleet. Japanese commanders had nothing comparable. They would learn where American fighters were only when Hellcats began tearing their aircraft from the sky. Inside American carriers, the Combat Information Center coordinated everything. 15 to 30 sailors tracked radar contacts, plotted incoming raids, monitored fuel and ammunition levels, and directed intercepts across the entire task force. Specialized fighter direction officers calculated intercept paths and guided combat air patrols by radio. The Japanese were sailing blind. The Americans could see everything. And at the center of it all was the F-6F Hellcat. Grumman's fighter had been designed specifically to kill the Mitsubishi Zero. Powered by a 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine, it reached speeds of 375 to 380 miles per hour, nearly 40 miles per hour faster than the Zero. It climbed faster above 14,000 feet, dove faster at every altitude, and rolled better at high speeds. Its armament, 6.50 caliber machine guns with roughly 400 rounds per gun, vastly outmatched the Zero. Most importantly, the Hellcat was built to survive. Self-sealing fuel tanks prevented the catastrophic fires that turned the Zero into a flying coffin. Armor plating protected the pilot, stopping rounds that would instantly kill Japanese airmen. American pilots could absorb damage, stay in the fight, and still fly home. Japanese pilots who took hits simply did not. Then there was the VT proximity fuse, a revolution in anti-aircraft warfare. This tightly guarded secret used a miniature radio transmitter to sense nearby aircraft and detonate the shell within lethal range, about 70 feet from the target. A direct hit was no longer required. VT fuse shells averaged roughly 310 rounds per kill, compared to more than 1,100 rounds needed with conventional timed fuses. Enemy aircraft would be knocked down by the dozen. But the Americans held one final advantage: intangible, invisible, and utterly decisive. Pilot quality. Before Pearl Harbor, Japanese Navy pilots entered combat with an average of 700 flight hours, more than any air force on Earth. None of the Pearl Harbor attackers had fewer than 600 hours. Many flight leaders had over 1,500. They were the finest carrier pilots in the world. By June 1944, those men were dead. The grinding attrition of Coral Sea, Midway, and especially the Solomons campaign had consumed Japan's irreplaceable core of veteran aviators. The pilots aboard Ozawa's carriers were replacements. Carrier Division 1, his best, averaged only 6 months of training. Carrier Division 2 averaged 2 months. Carrier Division 3 averaged 3. American pilots aboard Essex-class carriers, by contrast, completed a minimum of 2 years of training with more than 500 flight hours. Many were already combat veterans. The gap was not marginal. It was catastrophic. Ozawa himself would later admit the problem. Training had been dangerously inadequate, in part because the airfield at Taitoi remained unfinished. Many pilots could not safely perform night carrier landings, a basic skill American aviators practiced routinely. Japan's desperate pilot shortage forced instructors from flight schools to be reassigned to frontline air groups, further collapsing the training pipeline. And there was one final factor Ozawa did not know. Beginning June 11th, American carrier strikes had systematically destroyed Japanese airfields throughout the Marianas. Approximately 86 aircraft were destroyed in the opening attacks alone. Vice Admiral Kakuji Kakuta, commanding shore-based aviation, failed to report these catastrophic losses. Ozawa sailed toward battle unaware that one of his primary offensive arms had already been severed. The 500 land-based aircraft he was counting on no longer existed. So when Captain Burke and the staff officers watched Mitscher choose to wait rather than strike on the night of June 18th, what they did not yet understand was the mathematics of the trap. Every mile the Japanese flew toward Task Force 58 burned fuel, drained inexperienced pilots, and carried them deeper into a defensive network designed to tear them apart. Mitscher understood that sometimes the best defense is overwhelming defense. June 19, 1944, 0830 hours. Aboard Japanese carriers, flight deck crews pushed the first aircraft toward the catapults. 45 Zero fighter bombers, 16 escorts, and 8 Jill torpedo bombers, 69 aircraft total, lift off from the light carriers Chitose, Chiyoda, and Zuho. They form up and head east toward the American fleet, 300 miles away. The pilots are confident. This is what they trained for. Strike the Americans. Land on Guam. Refuel. Strike again on the return flight. By sunset, the U.S. carrier force will be burning wreckage. They have no idea they are flying into a meat grinder. At 0955 hours, American radar detects the incoming raid at roughly 150 miles. Fighter directors now have nearly 30 minutes to position defenders. Aboard USS Lexington, the call goes out, "Hey Rube." The old circus cry for help. Every available Hellcat launches. Mitscher orders bomber aircraft sent east to orbit over open ocean, clearing volatile fuel and ordnance from carrier hangar decks. Carriers turn into the wind. Combat air patrol deploys in layered altitudes. Battleships bring anti-aircraft batteries to readiness. The Japanese formation closes to 70 miles. Then it makes a fatal mistake. Inexperienced pilots, scattered by the long flight, begin circling to reform. 10 minutes. 10 precious minutes while American fighters race into position. 10 minutes that will cost them everything. At 1036 hours, the slaughter begins. Hellcats from USS Essex, Hornet, and Bunker Hill hit the formation head-on. Lieutenant Commander Charles Brewer leads the first intercept, diving from 20,000 feet with the sun behind him. His wingman later says it felt like shooting ducks in a barrel. Within minutes, 25 Japanese aircraft plunge into the sea. Incendiary rounds ignite fuel tanks. Canopies shatter under .50 caliber fire. Pilots are killed before they can react, slumping forward as their planes spiral downward. Ensign Wendell 12 of Fighting Squadron 2 watches a Zero explode barely 50 feet in front of him. The blast rocks his Hellcat. Flaming debris flashes past his wing. He banks hard, lines up another target, fires a short burst. Black smoke pours from the Zero's engine. It rolls inverted, the pilot making no attempt to recover. Dead or unconscious, it no longer matters. The aircraft slams into the ocean at 300 miles per hour. The formation disintegrates. Individual aircraft scatter, desperately trying to evade American fighters that seem to materialize from every direction. Some Japanese pilots attempt classic Zero tactics, tight turning fights meant to exploit superior maneuverability. It fails. Hellcat pilots refuse to turn. They slash through the formation using speed and diving attacks, fire once, then climb away. Boom and zoom. The Americans learned this 2 years earlier. Japanese pilots with weeks of training have never faced it. Survivors press on. 16 more are shot down. Radio chatter fills the air. Splash 1. Splash 2. Get 'em off me. Fighter directors feed vectors. Warnings crackle about low ammunition. Kill confirmations stack up. Only 27 aircraft remain from the original 69. Some attack picket destroyers, missing by hundreds of yards. Inexperience shows. Wind, speed, altitude misjudged. 3 to 6 bombers break through to Vice Admiral Willis Lee's battleship line, the final shield before the carriers. Anti-aircraft fire erupts. 5-inch guns, 40mm quads, 20mm cannons. VT-fused shells do their deadly work. Aircraft simply vanish, blown apart by explosions that never require direct hits. One bomb strikes USS South Dakota, penetrating the main deck before detonating. 27 sailors die instantly. 23 more are wounded. Damage control teams fight fires in the wreckage. It will be the only serious damage inflicted on any American ship that day. Of the 69 aircraft in the first raid, approximately 42 are destroyed. From first radar contact to final splashdown, the attack lasts 34 minutes. Japanese pilots who survive and reach Guam find no fuel, no support, no shuttle bombing. They crash land on damaged runways or ditch offshore. Aircraft wrecked, fuel exhausted, bodies shaking from terror and fatigue. Aboard flagship Taiho, Vice Admiral Ozawa receives the first reports and refuses to believe them. He orders a second strike launched. This one is larger. 107 to 109 aircraft from fleet carriers Taiho, Shokaku, and Zuikaku. Radar picks them up at 60 miles. Intercepts are vectored while the Japanese are still far out. At least 70 aircraft are destroyed before reaching the fleet. The few that break through achieve nothing. A torpedo detonates harmlessly in Enterprise's wake. 4 of 6 dive bombers attacking Rear Admiral Montgomery's group are shot down. The remaining 2 miss. 97 of the attackers are lost. While the massacre unfolds overhead, death strikes from below. At 0810 hours, USS Albacore, submerged and stalking, gains firing position on a massive carrier. Commander James Blanchard orders 6 torpedoes launched. Japanese pilot Seikyo Komatsu spots the wakes and deliberately crashes his aircraft into one torpedo's path in a suicidal attempt to save the ship. It is not enough. One torpedo strikes Taiho. Damage initially appears minor. The armored flight deck remains intact. Flight operations continue. But an inexperienced damage control officer orders all ventilation opened to clear fuel vapors. Instead of venting overboard, gasoline fumes spread throughout the ship. Hours pass. The fumes accumulate. At 1,532 hours, Taiho explodes. The blast tears through the hangar deck. Secondary explosions reach aviation fuel stores. Japan's newest and most advanced carrier breaks apart and sinks. Roughly 1,650 men die. Ozawa transfers his flag, first to destroyer Wakatsuki, then to Zuikaku. He still does not know the full scale of the disaster. At 1,118 hours, USS Kavala, on her first war patrol, fires 6 torpedoes at veteran carrier Shokaku. 3 or 4 hits ignite fires among armed aircraft on the hangar deck. Damage control teams fight desperately. At 1,412 hours, secondary explosions reach the magazines. Shokaku breaks apart and sinks, taking 1,263 men with her. The third Japanese raid, 47 aircraft, is intercepted at 50 miles. 7 are shot down immediately. Many turn back. Losses are lighter only because most pilots never find the fleet. They wander the Pacific, fuel gauges dropping, searching for ships they cannot see. The fourth raid achieves nothing at all. 82 aircraft are launched with incorrect coordinates. They search. They circle. They burn fuel. When some attempt to land at Guam, Hellcats are waiting. 30 of 49 aircraft are shot down on approach. The rest are wrecked on landing or destroyed on the ground. That evening aboard USS Lexington, Lieutenant Junior Grade Ziggy Neff struggles to describe what he saw. Finally, he says it. Why? Hell, it was just like an old-time turkey shoot back home. The phrase spread ship to ship. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Individual achievements are staggering. Commander David McCampbell shoots down 5 dive bombers in the morning and 2 zeros over Guam, 7 kills in one day. He becomes an ace in a day and will finish the war as the Navy's leading ace, earning the Medal of Honor. Lieutenant Junior Grade Alexander Vrashu intercepts a formation of Judy dive bombers. In 8 minutes, using just 360 rounds from his 2,400-round supply, he shoots down 6 aircraft, 60 rounds per kill. Upon landing, he holds up 6 fingers to Mitscher watching from the bridge. Mitscher asks for a photograph, not for publication. For himself. By nightfall, Japan has lost roughly 350 carrier aircraft, plus additional land-based losses. American losses total about 29 planes. A kill ratio approaching 15-1. 2 fleet carriers sunk. Not a single American carrier seriously damaged. Ozawa ends the day with roughly 150 aircraft remaining from the 430 he committed. His land-based support is gone. His plan has collapsed. The decisive battle has become a decisive massacre. But Mitscher is not finished. Operational aircraft. Japan now has enough remaining pilots to equip just a single light carrier. American losses over the 2 days total 123 aircraft, most of them lost during the dangerous night recovery on June 20th. Approximately 109 American personnel are killed. No U.S. ships are sunk. Only USS South Dakota suffers significant damage. The consequences ripple through the rest of the Pacific War. For months later, at the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the Japanese Navy sends its remaining carriers not as a fighting force, but as bait. They are deliberate decoys, sacrificial ships meant to draw American carriers away from the invasion fleet. 6 Japanese carriers sail with just 108 aircraft between them. They lack planes. They lack trained aircrews. The carriers that once terrorized Pearl Harbor, Wake Island, and the Dutch East Indies are now empty shells, sent to die. Japan's inability to replace its lost aviators drives a desperate shift in tactics. Beginning in October 1944, kamikaze operations appear. If pilots cannot be trained well enough to survive combat, they will be trained just enough to crash their aircraft into American ships. The capture of the Marianas, secured by Mitscher's defense of Saipan, opens the door to a new phase of the war. From Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, 29 superfortresses begin striking the Japanese home islands. American bombers systematically dismantle Japan's urban and industrial centers. The strategic balance shifts irreversibly. Prime Minister Hideki Tojo's government collapses in disgrace. In the aftermath of the battle, criticism emerges. Some aviators and senior officers accuse Spruance and Mitscher of failing to pursue the Japanese fleet aggressively enough. Admiral John Towers demands that Spruance be relieved, declaring this is what happens when a non-aviator is placed in command of carrier forces. The complaints grow louder. But the final judgment comes from the highest level. The following month, Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, visits Spruance at Saipan. He delivers his verdict plainly. Spruance, you did a damn fine job there. No matter what anyone else tells you, your decision to stay near Saipan instead of chasing Ozawa's carriers was the right one. For months later, Admiral William Halsey, embodying the aggressive doctrine critics had demanded, chases a Japanese decoy force away from the invasion beaches at Leyte Gulf. And the cost of that decision will prove exactly why Mitscher's patience at the Philippine Sea changed naval warfare forever.